Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana.
Namaskar. Bhushans Academy of Performing Arts and Visual Presentation welcomes you all for today's Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana online interactive classical music and arts festival, wherein you get to meet several dignitaries, several international celebrities coming and sharing their thoughts, their journey with you. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಭೂಷಣ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರದರ್ಶಕ ಕಲೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ದೃಶ್ಯ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತಿ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಅಂತರ್ಜಾಲದ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಮುಖಪುಟದ ಪುಸ್ತಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಪೇಜ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಶ್ವ ನೃತ್ಯ ಗಾನ ಭೂಷಣ ಅನ್ನುವಂತಹ ಈ ಪೇಜ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಒಬ್ಬ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಖ್ಯಾತಿಯ ನೃತ್ಯಾಂಗನೆ, ಗುರು ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪರಿಚಯವನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಇದೆ. ಈ ದಿನ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಖ್ಯಾತಿಯ ಗುರು, ಒಡಿಸ್ಸಿ ನೃತ್ಯಾಂಗನೆ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶಾರನ್ ಲೋವೆನ್ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an acclaimed Odissi Guru, art exponent and artist Sharon Lowen ji with us. Sharon Lowen grew up in Detroit, United States, where her father was a chemical engineer and her mother a clinical psychologist. She trained in modern dance, ballet classes at Detroit Institute of Arts and Puppetry, Mime and Theatre since childhood. She was a member of the Detroit Puppetry Guild, Puppeteers of America, and Unima performed with George Lachwa's puppets for the Detroit and Cleveland Symphony Orchestras, and Jim Henson offered her an apprenticeship with Muppets, which was declined to accept a Fulbright scholarship to India. Following her bachelor's degree in humanities, fine arts, Asian studies, and ME in education and dance, Lowen arrived in India on a Fulbright scholarship in 1953 to continue Manipuri dance with Guru Singhajit Singh at Triveni Kala Sangam, Delhi. With extension and renewal of the Fulbright to 1975, she also trained in Mayurban Chow under Guru Krishna Chandra Naik, Odissi under Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra, Manipuri Palacholam under Guru Tangjam Chawwa Singh, and Manipuri Maiba Jagoi under Gurus Ranjana Maibi, Kumar Maibi, and R.K. Achaubi Sana Singh. She has got several awards to her credit, and she also portrayed a character which was based on herself in the Telugu film Swarna Kamalam. The film was directed by Shri K. Vishwanath. She performs an Odissi exponent in the movie. She not only teaches Odissi but also conducts workshops in Chow and Manipuri dance. She is the first woman soloist of previously all-male firm responsible for introducing Mayurban Chow to the United States of the 1978 Asian Dance Festival in Hawaii and later at the Olympics Art Festival of Masks in Los Angeles, and is singularly responsible for getting Chow present in Doordarshan's national broadcasts. Sharon has had an immense impact on Chow and has promoted its inclusion in arts education both at national and international levels. She is responsible for introducing Mayurban Chow to the United States of 1978, Asian Dance Festival in Hawaii, and later at the Olympic Arts Festival of Masks in Los Angeles, and also its presentation on India national television broadcasts. Sharon has been responsible in making Chow popular in the West, which is making a difference in the awareness of the local history in the regions of Serikela. She has also choreographed and performed Odissi dance in Telugu, Bengali, Malayalam, Tamil, Hindi, as well as Sanskrit and Oriya for performances and festivals around India, Doordarshan National India Television, and internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, today it's an honor, indeed an honor, to welcome this acclaimed performer, teacher, and exponent of Odissi, Chow, and many other art forms to our show, Srimati Sharon Lowen ji. Welcome, namaskaram.
Namaskar, pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Same here, ma'am. It's indeed an honor to have you on the show, and it is wonderful that you consented to be a part of the show, sharing your thoughts and journey. To start with, you come from States, and I'm sure the exposure to Indian arts was much later. When exactly you thought you should be learning dance, or when were you fascinated to learn dance?
Dance has always been part of my life, and I didn't actually come to India with the intention to pursue a career in classical Indian dance. I had had the opportunity to study Manipuri, and because I wanted to come to India, I felt that continuing my Manipuri would be an excellent cultural entree. But actually, my exposure to India and to the world started in my early childhood. When I was 10 or younger, I had seen Pantur Panchali and could identify with Durga. We had a sculptor from Baroda, very close family friends. We're still very close. So I wore a sari by the time I was 12 or 13. And I attended some Indian functions. At the same time, I was fortunate to grow up in a city that brought the arts from all over the world. So I was able to see classical Indian dance. I was able to see the Bolshoi, the Moiseyev, Spanish folklorico, Indonesian, African. And I was aware that there were many cultural perspectives. I was aware that while I would be training in the traditions that were available to me, whenever I had the opportunity to explore other cultures, I did. When I took a ballet seminar, they had someone teaching Bharatnatyam, for 5 days for an hour. So the exposures were there, the opportunities were there. My intention was that I would spend time in India, and whatever progress I made in Manipuri would inform whatever I did artistically, creatively, when I returned back to the US. When I finished my master's degree in dance, I also had taken, as part of the postgraduate MA in the School of Art and Architecture, a semester of photography and a semester of video production, so that I would be able to gather things that I would take back with me. But once I was in India and I was learning from a very wonderful and very traditional teacher, it was slow and steady. And I realized that if I left after a year, what little bit I had learned, I thought I'll be able to do that between the Bhangra and the bride's pageant, because I was familiar with the kinds of Indian functions in those days, back in the 70s. So I was fortunate that I could extend my Fulbright Fellowship. And meanwhile, I was seeing everything. I was seeing all of the dance performances, all of the lectures, everything that came. And I had seen a workshop by Guru Sharon Mahapatra at my institution where I was learning Manipuri. And I was fascinated by the way he taught. But I didn't want to be a dance collector, dabbling. It was only at the end of my second year, when I was actually preparing to go back to the US, that I thought that taking the workshop in Odissi, just academically, to understand something more of something that was closer to mainstream knowledge of classical Indian dance, knowing something of Hasta Abhinaya and some of the things from Abhinaya Darpana would be helpful. So I took his workshop, and then the rest is history, because he said I learned faster than anyone he taught. He taught me 3 items, an invocation, a Mangalacharan. He taught me Batu Nritya, which is usually a 1-year solid training in the technique. And he taught me 1 Pallavi. And he insisted, he forced me to get a costume made and to record the music. And I said, no, I only want to understand it. I'm not an Odissi dancer. And he insisted. And so with his encouragement, with his affection, with his generosity, and also with his amazing teaching and wonderful pedagogy, I continued. And then, as it turned out, that after going back to teach at University of Michigan for the summer, teaching Manipuri and then performing my little bit of Odissi and also Manipuri, I then came back to India at the end of the summer as an overseas hired teacher to do cultural things at the American Embassy School in New Delhi. That gave me another 3 years to continue with my Manipuri, with my Odissi, and with my Chow, which I had also started then. Again, it wasn't that I totally intended to be a classical dancer. In those days, foreigners were considered hippies. They were considered someone that one is flattered that they're interested, but of course they can't possibly be considered as an artist. But I was very fortunate that as I kept studying and would perform, then Rasika by Rasika, one thing would lead to another. There was no possibility from the beginning for at least 15 years for anyone to respond to any kind of a request. So I never developed the habit of ever writing or asking anyone. It was only by chance when I did something, then someone would see it and they would say, oh, I'll give you one example. In 80, perhaps 84 or so, I had danced at Azad Bhavan in Delhi. Azad Bhavan is the auditorium of the ICCR. It wasn't a big deal. Most anyone could apply and get the auditorium. And the DG, Alan Nazareth, was so impressed with my performance that afterwards he said, what do you do for musicians abroad? And I said, I use recorded music. And he said, I will cover the musicians' travel if you just follow these criteria, number of programs, how it's set up. And I organized 22 self-organized, I don't know how I did it, 22 performances in Lekdams. I was accompanied by my Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra. I couldn't believe that he actually did come. Bhubaneswar Mishra, who really is the composer for most of the music in our repertoire and was the mentor of Hari Prasad Chaurasia. Rakal Mahanti, wonderful vocalist, and Guruji's son, Ratikant Mahapatra, who now heads Srijan. And it would be impossible, that ICCR would have ever done such a thing. And there was a lot of resistance within ICCR, but the DG was very strong. And so in that sense, my whole career has been that way. Long answer to your question.
No, that's an amazing thing. What I was curious about was, see, you were trained in ballet when you were in Detroit, but how difficult was it from your side to convince your parents and your family to pursue an art form along 7 shores in India? You had to travel, probably you were married when you came to India, if I'm not wrong.
No. I did the reverse of what Indians do. After I had been in India on my Fulbright for 2 years, then I thought that I would really like to stay a little bit longer. And I knew the director at the American School. I spoke to him. I said, I don't like to have an agenda. It's occurred to me. And he said, well, I know that you could adjust. Show me your transcript. And he said, you have more English than any of our English teachers. And so it would be great. And I said, yes, but I have a fiance who's been waiting for me. And he said, you should. So he looked at his transcript. So what I did was I returned to the US in 75, taught at University of Michigan. He taught at Michigan State University that summer. We got married and we both came back together in the end of 75. And then for 3 years we were together. And he was working on his work and I did mine. So Indians come back to India, get married and take their spouse back. I did the opposite. I went back for the summer, got married and brought my husband back with me.
But was he willing enough to come with you and pursue his dream? He would have had his thing, or was it like, of course, like-minded people meet and they would want to carry forward? But then I'm curious, the audience is curious, like when you broached the topic that you would want to take up an art form in India, he was kind enough, or he was also wanting to come. That's a big thing. Like probably his interests would have been different, and he would have said, no, I would want to do this, and I don't want to. How was it?
Basically, I mean, I gave him the option. I said, I'll come home. And I said, if you would like to come to India and teach at the American school, he was a university professor. If you would like to teach at the school level, then I'll come home and we'll get married and we'll come together. And otherwise, then I promise I will take the position for only 1 year and then I will come back. And he was teaching at a small college in the Midwest, and he wasn't terribly happy there. And he thought that it would be much more interesting to come to India. And I mean, he was a theater historian, European theater, and a set designer. And so both of us pursued interests that were scholarly and artistic and not typical. And the reason that we were together, because of a mutual respect for the importance of things that others might think are too tangential or not important.
From Chow to ballet to Odissi, you've moved on to different genres. But when did you think you should stick to Odissi or rather pursue more in serious Odissi?
Actually, Manipuri is my main style, and I love Manipuri. And so I pursued as much as I could all three. Chow, Mayurbhanj Chow, there was the great Guru Krishna Chandra Nayak that had stayed on in Delhi after he received his Sangeet Natak Academy Award, because Bharatiya Kala Kendra wanted him to create ballets based on Chow, and SNA covered that. At first, I mean, I was fascinated by it because as you can imagine, with my modern dance and ballet training, Manipuri did not have the same demands physically of what I was capable of. And in Chow, you have all of the strength, the flexibility, the control that I had the training to do. And I took it up when I saw that actors from the US would come for a very short time and be thrilled with the physical training they got. And I felt that a dancer can learn more than an actor. And even if I make very slow increment, it would be good. Now, Manipuri, Odissi, and Chow. After I'd been at the American school, I felt that it was time to go back to the US and see what I could do with the dance that I had learned. I didn't want it to be a vanity, like people who, print their own poetry to share. The longest I was in the US was from 78 to 81. Otherwise, it's just been back and forth. During that time, I did 250 school lecture demonstrations in the Los Angeles Unified School District, and some in other places, 10 here, 15 there, 20 there, plus concerts and plus teaching Manipuri and Odissi. Then when I'd worn out my costumes, I returned to India with the intention that I would continue all three styles, and wherever my gurus had more time and where I was making good use of my time, I would pursue it. So over the years, gradually, much as I loved the Manipuri, and I did performances for many years that would be half Manipuri and then Odissi, and sometimes adding on some Chow. But actually, once I had a daughter, it became very difficult to have all of those costumes, all of that set up, plus nappies and a baby. traveling in India and abroad. And I just said, Uncle, until I'm at a level where there are stagehands to manage all of this, which is never going to happen, I've got to limit it. Now, in Manipuri, being in Delhi, it was very difficult to have musicians. And without musicians, you're just repeating. I mean, you're not creating. And you want to have new repertoire and keep creating. In Odissi, there's always the challenges. Come and dance Tansan Tyagaraja. Come and dance at Sankat Mochan. Come and dance at Padmanabhan, these temple, that temple. And so there's a motivation and the facilities to keep creating. With Chow, of course, you can't very easily do a solo program. Chow is physically very demanding. And so one can do a couple of items. I did many times with my student, Pandit Gopal Dubey, who's gotten a Padmashri and SNA awards for Chow. We both had the same guru. He came to me for Odissi. We wound up collaborating on Chow. And I did productions for National Program of Dance because Chow was considered folk. So it wouldn't normally been invited. So I had the ability, when the DG said, what do you want to do? I said, let's do Chow. So the Chow, I continued with the company, but it would take, I would go to Saraikela. We would bring musicians from Mayurbhanj to Saraikela. We would work for a couple of months. We would have a production. But after some years, it was difficult to do that. And now at my age, I can't physically do Chow. So I continued it as long as I could. The thing with Odissi is that, as we all know, with Odissi, Bharatnatyam, Kuchipudi, Vilasini, all of these forms, you have your pure dance and you've got your bhav. And so as a dancer matures, you want to get that sweet spot where you physically can do everything, but you have enough life riyaz that you can evoke ras and your abhinaya has some meaning. And you have a balanced program. But obviously, if one is able to, to internalize, then you have something to offer, no matter how old you are. You can sit and do your bhav, and still people will enjoy it. And the other thing too is that I love, of course, the lyricism and the pure dance of Odissi, and I'm a stickler in training and the technique. But Abhinaya is the opportunity to constantly explore and rediscover and unpeel the onion and going deeper and deeper. So it's always a fascination as you continue to do that. Now, you asked me about like the three styles and deciding on Odissi. People, I've obviously been told that you have to make a choice. You can't keep doing three styles. No one can take you seriously if you're doing more than one. First of all, it's almost impossible to master one style. So it's no more difficult to master more. It takes time. You have to separate the energy as well as the physicality. But also each style is, it's like having a child. They're all different, but you can't say I love this one and not that one. I did, of course, draw the line when, God bless him, K. Vishwanath wanted me to dance to inspire Bhanupriya in Swarnakamalam, and he wanted me to come and spend a month or two with Vempati Sir and learn Kuchipudi. And I said, I really want to just do Odissi, because even if he teaches me well, I fear that something will show to knowledgeable Rasikas that I'm not doing it 100%. And also, I don't want people to ask me to perform kuchipudi because I definitely cannot add one more style. There isn't enough hours in the day that one could even imagine doing that. Those days, Indrani and Yamini, and mixing and matching, it's not something that I would be able to do.
When exactly, when you said you would want to learn, and when you wanted to shift, and when you wanted to take it up as a profession, how encouraging was the fraternity? Because we already had several locals doing this art form, and of course, a couple of foreigners also coming over. Don't want to use that word, probably from a different culture, ethnicity. But then, how easy or difficult was it for you to establish yourself as a dancer in the same city, doing their own dance form from the same ethnicity, in competition with the same classical dance professionals? How easy, how supportive was the fraternity to you? One, two, how easy was it for you to establish there?
Well, I mean, those are very interesting questions, and there are many layers to it. First of all, it took me years to realize that anyone would feel threatened by me wanting to dance, because there's many venues, everyone has their thing. In 1978, I danced in Kolkata at Kalamandir, and Biman Ghosh, who was the head of HMV Records, he said, "Sharon, you're already in the top 10% of Indian classical dancers, but you will never get the recognition for that." And when he said that, it didn't bother me, because I understand, that there would be a resistance. But I was very happy that I'd had the opportunity to perform Manipuri and Odissi there. One of the things is that for me, for someone coming from outside, first of all, there's no sense of entitlement. I'm not someone who says I deserve or I'm entitled. And I also never wanted to dance as good for a foreigner. So in the beginning, when I would be invited, I didn't accept invitations because I didn't want to just be a novelty. So in answer to your question, in terms of the other dancers, I would say that there was like a shift from day to night after 15 years. In the beginning, first of all, I didn't know any dancers really while I was doing Manipuri, because I was the only student and my guru had a company, and I didn't actually get to talk to company members until after I met someone in Manipur who then was visiting, and then that gave me an entree. A very conservative arrangement. And I actually knew 4 artists that were my uncles because of the artist friend in America. So I actually knew people in contemporary art. It took a while for me to know other dancers as I continued doing Odissi. Basically, I would say that the dance fraternity was very friendly and open for the first years when I was studying and I was interested and appreciated. In Kelu Babu's classes, it was not evident of any hierarchies or favoritisms. Everyone learned very nicely and very equally, and then they went off and did what they did. What happened was that when the public began to accept me as equal to my peers, then there was resentment, and then there were, yes, a lot of efforts to suppress my opportunities. You know, accusations, people calling up people who were sponsoring my programs and saying, "Don't do her program. Why are you doing it? I'll do it for free." And occasionally would come to me like they're saying this, and I'm like, well, I mean, I wouldn't even know who a sponsor is or who's getting a program until I see an advertisement. But obviously other dancers know what's going on, but I didn't know anything. And I think that innocence and that naivete was good because it's a little bit protective. But the thing is that when I was being respected by the public, then there was more interest, because here's someone who obviously it's not been easy. They've come from abroad. They are not only doing on a skill level, but they've actually embodied it. People would have arguments like, somebody would say that someone, they took someone to my program and that person would say, "Where's the American? This is a very good Indian dancer, but where's the American? And she is American. No, she's not." And they would be really fighting about it. Sometimes I'd have to get called in about it. So there were a lot of efforts by some artists to stop programs. I had like one accompanist who also accompanied obviously other dancers, and I naively would come and say, "Oh wow, I've been offered a program in Mysore, by Patnaik, and to dance there." And then, but then it doesn't happen; it evaporates. Why? Because I've told this musician. He's told a dancer, they've contacted the people and said, "You don't want her. She's not Hindu. She's da-da-da-da-da-da." And, and things would evaporate. "Oh, I've got 27 programs in Haryana. This is going to be wonderful." They feel that I can really share this art with, the people there. And then they go and tell, and then it's gone. But I never realized what was going on. I just kind of waited. And, and in the end, it doesn't matter. You're doing your art. You love to do it. It's a performing art. It's a gift you want to give to somebody. You need an audience. But finally, it doesn't matter what the quantity is or where it is. And there isn't any dancer who doesn't have things they've cried about, things they've been filled with joy about. Everyone has challenges, no matter at what level you're at. But, you love the art and you keep doing it. And basically, I just, you were saying about staying in India. I was going back and forth, but really, once my daughter was school age, I had to be in one place or the other. And I decided that being in India meant I would have my musicians. I could be able to create. Working on the difference between good and excellent is very small. I knew I couldn't do that if I was back in America, just repeating whatever I had done. And also that in America, I would be tangential. Whereas in India, I'm part of moving the tradition forward. And you're performing for people who know what is good. When I came to India, I was not tempted to do modern dance or contemporary dance, because what's the big deal about being, the best queen of the mountain in Delhi? If I'm doing modern dance, I want to be in New York with my peers. I don't want to be in New York doing Odissi, and I don't want to be in India doing modern dance. You want to be really in the mainstream. And, in terms of globalization, yesterday I was talking on the seminar on globalization. You see, classical Indian dance is classical. It's not folk. And classical means that everyone has equal access. In other words, you see people from Japan or China or Africa that can do classical ballet. It's something that you can imbibe. And sharing this wonderful art all over the world has been, more than a joy, because since the dance comes from a spiritual consciousness, okay, we are not in temples, so and the dance is beautiful, rhythm, costume, text, movement, and so it's absolutely fine if people want to just show the beauty of form, like sculpture, or if they want to just show their rhythmic prowess, or they want to just show themselves how beautiful they are and all of this stuff. But these traditions offer us the opportunity to create a sacred space and to offer a darshan to the audience who are collectively having an aesthetic experience that's metaphysical. And that aim to that is something that I feel is extremely worthwhile. In the West, dance has been separated from the spiritual. Not entirely, obviously, great art always is transcendental, but to be able to share with people. And frankly, it doesn't make a difference whether it's in India or in the West, because there's all kinds of audiences with all levels of both aesthetic and spiritual awareness. Hats off to those dancers who are staying abroad and maintaining and growing and sharing. It's very important. I've enjoyed going there on tour, being there for 6 weeks, full out, and then coming back home here.
Now, you spoke about so much of the difficulties that you faced and all. I'm sure you would have had your lows, and you would have emotionally pulling down or emotionally going down, those kind of moments. What do you do, or what did you do then to tackle that and come out a winner?
Well, for one thing, it's good to have a bad memory. It's good to forget. You can't even remember, yade, and then somebody will go like, oh yes, it's like, oh, basically forget. I think that I think that for all of us, when something very disturbing happens, you get a slap in some way, or you get sick, or whatever happens, or something lost. Initially, your reaction is very, very, very strong. And then after a little while, you kind of like, acha, that's what it is. As they say in Buddhism, that there's no problems. Either there's something you can do about it and you do, or else it's a state and you accept it. For instance, I did not want to be looked at as a foreigner. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe that's all that people still think. But, I think it did change. Like there would be the reviews and they would say, the American with the big eyes. And then after a while, they just dropped the American. For years, I'm just Sharon Lowen, Odyssey dancer. It's not essential. Actually, a lot of people don't even think about it. I once asked Indo-US friendship, how come you never think of me? They said, we don't think of you as American, which is nice. Sanjukta Panagrahi, one time she said, Sharon is, except when I speak with my American accent, there isn't anything that, that doesn't ring true. I would say, okay, in answer to your question, one thing that you need to do, can do, makes you feel better, whether it's anything to do in life. Instead of becoming inward and apathetic, you need to take action. You need to make a difference. Whatever I have learned, I have tried to help others. In my teaching, my students never had an iota of that sense of jealousy or competition. They all learned how to teach while they were learning because I had them guide each other. That comes from my American background. When one of my students went to Orissa for her national scholarship exam, she said, ma'am, I don't understand. There was another girl from Delhi. And I said, oh, you're from Delhi? And she didn't want anything to do with me. And I was like, she's been brought up to be jealous, to see everyone as a threat. My student had no idea why she was being shunned. Okay, so one thing is you create an atmosphere so that others don't have to have that, that feeling. And also with international students and also Indians, giving help and guidance on how to maneuver sometimes with difficulties with some of their gurus. And then also in 1990, I started the first of 6 annual festivals that were Videshi Kalakar Utsav, because I had reached a level where people said, okay, there's you and there's John Higgins, the Carnatic vocalist. And I was like, no, there's more. And I said, I'm doing a festival, Videshi Kalakar. And they would say student, and I'd say artist. No one ever connected the idea of a Videshi being an artist. And I presented Ramli Ibrahim. First time in Delhi, I presented Dominique Delorme, Jai Govind, Ileana Chittaristi, all of these people. And then in Delhi, which is the capital, right? Artistic capital. These dancers got to be seen in India rather than learning and going away. They performed with live music. They got reviews that they could take home and give themselves credibility. And it totally changed the attitude toward international students. One time, Vinod Mehta, who was the editor of, Outlook magazine, I think, he said, Sharon, one young woman called and said, you should do an article on me. I'm doing Indian dance. I'm come from outside. And he said, that's not new. Sharon changed all that. So today, international students and artists are on an equal footing. I mean, that doesn't make it easy, but at least, the thing is that, and now, of course, we've gone overboard the other way sometimes. There's all of these so-called international festivals where anybody who's got a foreign passport is put on and you say, look, we're international. This is not the same as like calling great artists from another country. Yes, today international artists are equal. And I stopped the festival after 6 years when that had been achieved. Because I was never going to repeat anyone. Once you had been seen, that was like in the old days, there would be the Baitak where you would introduce the Shishya who's ready to be seen to the Narayan Menins of the world and let them all see her, and then they would all promote her. So when bad things happen to you, the best thing you can do is try to make sure that whatever you learn from it, you can save others. Because, we're going through our life and we're learning what we're learning, but you can extend your reach so much farther by helping others. And also, when you get to like the midpoint in your career, there's two kinds of people, as a very dear friend of mine that I danced with in college said, the people who give back and the people who are selfish. So,
I really, the radiant smile, I'm sure you wouldn't get wild. Are there instances when you go wild and you're very angry and upset, and how do you vent it out?
say again, when I'm angry.
Because you're always smiling, and you're very positive and all. But do
Oh
you
boy,
ever get
I
angry?
do
And
get
I'm
angry.
sure all
I do
humans
get
get angry,
angry.
but then
I don't get angry at things that are important. Well, I mean, I do in terms of like politics and like Trump and like this, but I lose it when I'm talking to like Airtel or the bank on the phone, and they're always saying we're so sorry, and I'm like, don't tell me you're sorry, solve this problem. It's like, let's say, I mean, the internet goes, and it's like I've got a Zoom coming up in an hour. Okay. Okay, the thing is, yes, I do get angry. I don't get angry, I think, as much as I used to, and I think it's because when you get angry, first of all, we all know it doesn't do any good at all. It doesn't resolve anything, and it doesn't prove the seriousness of your concern. And it's like, having feathers in a pillow to the wind. You can't get it back again once you've done it. So when you're angry, all you can do is like, be mindful. How do I feel, and why do I feel this way? And what is it? Mostly it's because of fear and because of a lack of control. Something has happened that you thought should have been done or was done, and it wasn't. And so there's this panic, this fear. It's like, I can't manage it. And so one gets angry. Oh, it doesn't help. You just have to deal with it. So, it's really, I do get angry, but it's stupid. It's really stupid to get angry. Although one time, many years ago, I remember His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave a talk about the value of negative emotions. So it's not that like you shouldn't be angry about like injustice and bad things that are happening. But it's how you express it, and how you deal with it and what comes out of it. It's not like you should be apathetic, but you feel that, and it's like you have to then do something about it. Yeah.
most dancers have this in mind that their children should take over their legacy, or probably continue fall into the same streamline as the mothers or fathers are, because that is, and once you're blessed with a daughter, it comes with that calling. How did you ever have this pressure, or did your daughter face the pressure, or did you ever think she should start dancing, or you taught her to dance? How things
That's a
how are things been?
very interesting question and subject. My daughter studied some Bharatnatyam when she was small, and she of course did some Odissi with me, and she wanted to learn Kuchipudi, and I said, you've really got to wait until the others are sorted, otherwise they're going to get mixed together. You've got to have a solid, it's like learning a language. You've got to have closure and a complete language, with another. And later she did do Kuchipudi with Raja Radha Reddy for a while in school, but she couldn't keep it up. When she was at college, she was doing some South American techniques. But she also had performed in Chow. She was Krishna in a production that I did at Kamani Auditorium and also at Jeevan Rekha and also for Doordarshan. But honestly, I did not push her at all, and I didn't really encourage her, because you should dance because you really want to. There's a great quote. Agnes de Mille, the great choreographer, was asked by someone, "Do you think I should dance?" And she said, "If you need to ask the question, then the answer is no." So you and I and those who love to dance, you just love to do it from various directions. But I knew how hard the life and career of a dancer is. And because I love my daughter, I did not wish that for her, unless she was driven to do it. Especially because she doesn't look Indian as I do. I mean, her Hindi is much better than mine, and she's born and brought up in India, but she looks Videshi. And the challenges that she would have had, I didn't wish that on her. So she had dance, and she had everything. She also had a 4-octave range singing voice. She's also a brilliant painter. She's directed plays. She acted in a 52-episode Bengali TV series that's I understand is on YouTube now, Badeshini Bahu. But finally, after all of that, she decided she did not want to be publicly available, and she wanted to pursue things that were more intellectual and artistic, but she did not want to have to be public with what she was doing. And so she's concentrated on her art, her academics, her writing, and I'm just extremely lucky that that she had these multi-talents so that she could do finally what she wanted. Okay, importance of theory in performance. It depends what you mean by theory. I wish you
Natya Shastra, probably Natya Shastra, yeah, probably Natya Shastra, and the way it is perceived, and it like some people just learn the art form without knowing the actual meaning of mudras, or probably practice it with just because it is being taught. And then some people would want to get in deeper and understand why is it and what is it and why you show. Probably that's what she meant.
Well, you can't just be a monkey repeating steps that you've learned and jumping around like a jack in the box. You need to understand things. Now, you can call that theory. You can call it philosophy. You can call it Sanskriti. You can call it life riyaz. Like we all know the great story that in order to learn this, you have to learn that. You have to learn a sculpture and architecture and music. I mean, one life is not enough to learn everything. When you're learning dance to come to performance, depending on your personality, depending on your karma, depending on your guru, you can start from different directions. But finally, you have to have everything. So when I started to learn from Guru Kailacharan Mahapatra, I knew how to see movement. So what he showed me, I could replicate. But I told him, I said, I don't want to perform because I don't know the theory. I don't know the difference between a mistake. That's what I call, I say to my students, there's a difference between a mistake and a hanging offense. So like in Odyssey, if the elbow's down, that's a hanging offense. You know, if I do Tripitaka perhaps instead of Mayur, that's a mistake. Okay, but that would be a hanging offense. And I said, I have learned this whole thing like that. Now, right now, one of my students who's been my student for 20 years, he's going to teach first the bowls. You see, dancers come and they start learning the steps or the patterns. Some teachers say, no, first you have to learn the swaras and the tala first. Get that as a solid foundation, then you learn the movement, all right? Both ways work. Finally, you have to have both. When you have a text, you have to not only be learning your guru's interpretation of that text, you have to understand who is the poet? When did they write? Is it Bhakti movement? Is it Sangam? Bhakti is Bhakti, and yet there are subtle differences. If it's in a, this part of the country or that, a village girl and how she'll be is not quite the same in Punjab from Orissa or even maybe in Kerala. You have to really understand these little differences. Even how do you string a flower? Or how do you play the gungas? So, yes, you need to know theory. You don't necessarily need to start with theory, but you're not a complete dancer without having the theory. When Kumkum Mahanti at the Odissi Research Center got together all of the gurus so that they could basically create a modern Shastra. And I worked on the English version from the Ordia. It was only years later when I was asked to give a talk about Karanas and Odissi. And I said, I don't know anything about Karanas and Odissi. And then they said, well, we've asked so-and-so. And I said, well, they wouldn't know either. Then I did a little bit of thinking. I looked at all of the marvelous things that Padmaji has done. I talked to knowledgeable friends. I realized that one of the books I'd edited was the Karanas in Odissi, but we didn't use that terminology. So Akash Bhumi is a step because this is the movement pattern. The thing is that you will never get done unpeeling the onion, which is so wonderful. You will never know enough. Of course, I mean, forgive me for saying this, but I've always known how little I know. What has amazed me is to find that dancers who I would think would know so much don't. Dancers and critics. I mean, they really, and it's like musicians. And it's like, this is all that you do. This is your whole life. You're not coming from outside and doing all these. This is how can you not have deeply gone into and understood and imbibed this? But another thing is, okay, I remember when I was doing my Shivivaha for Khajuraho on Shivratri, and I did it every year. We would do it, change the music, different style, some combos. And I wondered why some dancers in this group don't take the opportunity to learn and grow. It's something that's always amazed me. And I finally figured it out. Artists, actual artists, are people who really are always students, are always curious, are always learning, whereas there are dancers who are technicians. They've been trained to a certain level, and that is good enough so that they can be in a group and get work and earn a living. And if they weren't doing that, I don't know, they might be a waiter in a restaurant, or they might be fixing refrigerators. They basically learned a little bit. That's all they need to know. They've got technical skill. They're not artists. Theory, it's like, do you need to know theory? It's almost like, do you need to breathe? The theory is part of everything. Everything that your teacher is teaching you is going to be reflecting theory. Whether you, for instance, if you learn all of your Vinyayogas, will it make you a better dancer? Maybe not necessarily, because as you're learning compositions, you know that here's your Darpana, and here's your water, right? Here's me, here's this, here's that, here's that. And maybe you haven't learned the slokam. But if you do learn your Vinyayoga slokams, it will mean that when you're choreographing, you can draw on images that you haven't already experienced through a particular dance that you've
experienced. It will become easy to interpret, and you don't need any other reference, because you already know the sloka and you already know how it is. When you do that, it's easier to interpret. You don't have to worry that I haven't done this before, or I don't know this.
Right. Yeah.
There's this question: having invested so much of your life in India, you're more Indian than many Indians. How do you see India contributing globally to culture in current times of conflict?
Okay. First of all, it breaks my heart when anyone says I'm more Indian than Indians. The last, not just generation, but a couple of generations of Indians have not even had the opportunity that your grandparents had, where there was only Doordarshan to watch. They all knew the difference between Kathakali and Bihu, because that's what TV was showing, without actually a policy. Yes, it's national unity and diversity and national integration, but you're showing stuff. People had some idea of something. It is very, very unfortunate not to know your own culture. When you learn about another culture, you learn about yourself. You discover that, oh, they do that and we do that. How interesting. It doesn't make one better than another, but you have to have a foundation. And I've been listening lately to Amrish after listening to the audiobooks of Shiva and Malusha and everything. And I love, the points that he makes, which is that there's always been an openness in Indian tradition. There is no one path, but you need to have a foundation. It's like, I always quote this, as Gandhi said, paraphrasing, let the doors and windows be open, but let me not get blown off my feet. You have to know where you're starting from. So the thing is, when someone asked me, an Indian college student that was hosting me in America when I arrived, they said, so do you feel more Indian or American? And I said, well, both. They said 50-50. I said, no, 100-100. And that's what everyone should be. I am who I am. I don't want to be a second-class Indian. You don't want to be a second-class American or European. You are who you are, and you are entitled to everything that's there in the world. You're entitled to to embody it depending on yourself. A.K. Ramanujan was equally world-class poetry in Kannada and in English. Everyone can't do that, but the possibility exists. When one professor and I were at Central University in Hyderabad talking over breakfast, he said, Sharon, I did my PhD in the US. I teach American studies, but I teach it from my perspective as an Indian. He said, when you are talking, teaching, whatever, you can talk as an Indian, you can talk as an American. Now, maybe that's not something everyone can do, but it's possible. It's, just like you choose the language you speak. It's so important to understand and appreciate other cultures. You need to know your own. When I took Professor Walter Spink's course on Arts of Asia at University of Michigan, the first 2 weeks, he taught the fundamentals of Western art because the students can't begin to look at traditions across Asia if they haven't understood why Picasso made Guernica and what are the iconography of medieval painting. If you don't know your own culture, you've got to know it. Then you can learn and you can understand and share. And it is so important. And it's also so important to do it from an early age. You see, so many people are already at college level before they discover other. It needs to be familiar when you're young. People talk about, young people, they like Western music instead of Indian music. Well, which Western music are you talking about? Are you comparing Western classical music with Indian classical music? No, you're comparing Western pop music with Indian classical. Okay, compare Bollywood and Western pop, which are almost the same now, right? Explore Western classical if you like Indian classical. But the thing is, if you don't hear these things when you're young, so that they have a certain familiarity, they always can stay that exotic other. When you look at people from other parts of the world, when you look at Eskimos or whatever, do you look at them as other, or do you see them as like you're looking in a mirror at people who could be you or your grandparents or family? I mean, you have to really understand that we are all the same. There's the same inner reality that we share.
There is this question why I agree that theory is important, but is art to be seen only from the intellectual perspective? Are we not missing the emotional or experimental perspective? We have seen kids learn the art intellectually, but don't really enjoy the process. Do we get the balance right?
Well, I think Ramita, you've answered your own question. I mean, obviously you have to have a balance. When we are communicating through dance, if we are doing something that could be done better by reading something, then we should not be dancing. My intention that when I am dancing, that you are going to get an emotional, a kinetic experience in your body, in your vibrations, in your heart, in your sensibilities, that you would not get if you just read about it or read a text. If I take the challenge to dance in Sankalp Mochan and take, Hanuman Dhyana slokas, which are brand new to me, but I have looked at them and I'm trying to internalize them. And then I'm trying to evoke what does it feel like if you're Hanuman chewing on a pearl to try to, tried to see if Rama's inside. That is something I would never have thought about reading about it. But when I have to internalize it and feel it and bring it out, I need to give that audience an experience that they who do these things every day, they're going to get an experience that is communicating something additional, enhancing. And so absolutely the arts are about that. But don't forget, you have to have a palette. If you're going to paint, it's not like, here's a bunch of colors, just express yourself. You have to have some parameters. You have to know something about how colors mix and what colors they make. You have to have some idea about either perspective or composition or design. And in dance, if you just want to just get up and move freely, well, that's fine. That exuberance is great, and we do that. But when you want to communicate through dance, you have to have a vocabulary. You can break the vocabulary. You can use the vocabulary. But if you don't have anything, you're going to be inarticulate. Rules are made to be broken. But when you come to things like these classical dance traditions, over a long period of time, people have refined and refined and refined a language. And it's a very useful language for speaking. In the West, when the constraints of the classical dance, which was basically an entertainment, and now ballet has grown so far beyond it, but it was an entertainment. They broke the tradition and they evolved new languages. And yet, you've all heard of Martha Graham and a handful of others who evolved a complete language that they passed on, which is now, quite old-fashioned. But the thing is that every modern dancer was supposed to not copy a language that was created. They were supposed to feel free and create new language. Well, to create a new language is not easy. How articulate can you be? That's like a real challenge. So it's amazing what can be done when you're trying to start from, whatever. All I can say is that we need everything, and everyone comes from a different direction. You see, if I love to explore a text and then bring it out, I have a girlfriend, and we've talked about this. She's a wonderful dancer, and she loves the physicality of it. And so what she did was she went to the Gotipur, the boy dancer tradition with the Bharatnatyam and the acrobatics, and worked to see how bringing together the Gotipur and what has become classical Odissi, and she's done incredible stuff. There's no one way. And when you have a great guru, each one then from that, we do what is the thing that for us will be, coming out of us. I don't make a lot of pallavis. I don't feel that I have the musical grounding to do it. I see some people make pallavis and they're just stringing steps together. There's not a real structure that is actually what ought to be there. I can choose dances when we're combining, with a Tilana or a Tarana, whatever. I can do that. But I don't presume to feel that I understand how to construct it. And so let others do that. My student can do that because he's got the musical training. I can do what I need to do, but it's better to go in directions where you have more. You know, so balance and do what works for you, and but always try not only to work to your strengths, but this new philosophy. Always try to also work on the things where you're weaker and make those stronger too.
At this juncture, can we see little Abhinaya from you, ma'am? It'll be wonderful for people to, watch you perform a couple of lines probably from what do you choose to do?
Let me move this back a little bit. Okay.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Srimati Sharon Lowen, an acclaimed Odissi artist who will be probably, I'll try to sing a couple of lines, couple of the Sashtapati from Jayadeva's composition. नाथ हरे जगन्नाथ हरे नाथ हरे जगन्नाथ हरे सीधा दीनारा सीधती राधा वासगृहे सीधती राधा वासगृहे पश्यति दिशि दिशि रहसि भवतं 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 पश्यति दिशि दिशि पश्यति दिशि दिशि रहसि भवतं पश्यति दिशि दिशि रहसि भवतं पश्यति दिशि दिशि रहसि भवतं त्वदरगर मधुरामुदिपिबन्तं त्वदर मधुरामुदिपिबन्तं त्वदर मधुरामुदिपिबन्तं पिबतो नाथ जगन्नाथ हरे नाथ हरे जगन्नाथ हरे Sri Radha Radha Amazing, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, thank you. It was outstanding. It was out of the world. The expressions were amazing. Thank you for doing this. Now, what is your routine like in pandemic?
Oh, my routine in pandemic. I basically haven't been out of the house since March 22nd. Um, I'm lucky that I have a support system. So, because I have a couple of dogs that my daughter left me when she shifted to Singapore. So it's good to have help with the dogs. One of the things that's totally different is that now I'm teaching Zoom classes, as everyone is. But the thing is, for several years, people have asked about teaching online, and I was very uncomfortable. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to organize it. I didn't know how you can communicate. And I just basically put it off. So obviously with pandemic, there was no choice. And I am enjoying it so much. And I'm teaching choreographies, not just like basic running. I never like to teach practice. I don't like to have students come and just do their riyaz. I like to be explaining and teaching and correcting. So these Zoom classes means that students from all over the world, as well as India, are able to not have to travel to India and all of the difficulties from South America, from Europe, from China, from the US. They can just open up their laptop and they have class. And so most evenings, weekday evenings, I teach in the evening because it's early morning in other parts of the world. It's a little late for the Indian students, but it means the others, can at least be awake. And it's been absolutely wonderful sharing the dances. And it's one of the things about my Guru Kilacharan Mahapatra, was that he was very generous in his teaching. And he knew that by teaching freely to dancers in different cities, that they all would not necessarily have the same sense of responsibility to the art. He would definitely not have the control over them and what they did. But he felt that the art was strong enough that those who didn't do it properly or seriously, they would do it and that would fade. And then the cream will rise to the top. And so I find that the students who are learning abroad are very sincere. And I think that it's been very worthwhile. So my routine is quite peaceful. I'm glad I have those classes. And then, of course, there's presentations to prepare. I've just finished a second book. Here, I'll just show you. This book came out not too long ago, if anybody's interested. Art Without Frontiers, Classical Dance and Music of India, available on Amazon. And this is actually not just me writing. This is what dancers, scholars from India, from abroad, said their presentations in seminars that I did in the 90s, and also the seminars taking the evergreen subjects of what is authenticity, what is the transmission of tradition, what is different for gurus now, what is different for students. So all of these presentations were brought together in this book. Now, the book that I just finished yesterday design final is Shringar in classical Indian dance. And so I've edited that, I've done the Odyssey, and then I've invited others to do the other styles. So I get up in the morning and I do some yoga. First of all, I do a puja. Actually, it's I'm been attempting to study Prasangika Madhyamika Buddhism, and so my puja is a Buddhist puja, but puja's puja. It's all the same, non-duality. And so I do puja, then I do some yoga. I might do some exercises. I don't do it every day. I try to do it every day. Sometimes I just skip it because I start reading the newspapers and then the time is gone. I do not spend a lot of time on social media, and I'm very sorry, but we are so bombarded with messages. And I just resent and refuse to be owned by it. So I am really apologetic that I miss things that I would love to see. I miss messages from people I'd like to hear from. But there's so much noise. So whether it's WhatsApp, I don't do Instagram, Facebook, I hardly look at, I'm trying to. My emails, I don't keep track of. I try to keep track of my students and my classes. And the others, sometimes I dig in and I catch up. That's pretty much it. The only WhatsApp messages I check for and open are from my daughter. The others, they accumulate. There might be 10, because mostly it's groups who are saying, please watch my program. And how many programs every night can one watch? I would love to. And frankly, I love staying home. I love not going out. I really, if I was going out, it'd be okay, but it's fine to stay home. I'm quite content.
What? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That shows so much of contentment, and what you do, you're enjoying and you're liking it, and you like to be like that. That innocence. I would rather say, yes, if you are being bombarded with social media with so many messages and things, it becomes too much intriguing at times. So, what is it that one last thing that would you like to tell today's students? One, two, students who come from abroad in anticipation of probably having a career in India or career outside with reference to dance. And three, for general youth that would want to learn this art form and go further. What is it that you have to say to them?
Okay, the first thing, what do I have to say to everyone? Be honest to yourself, be honest to the art, and be honest to your teacher. And then everything will be fine. Every time you perform, you think of those things. You should feel that all your God, your guru, yourself, the art, that everyone is watching you. You're watching yourself. Your teacher doesn't have to be there. Imagine them there. You have a responsibility to the art of what they've given you to do the best you can. But at the same time, you have to be kind to yourself, because you can only do what you can do at that moment. It will never be perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. That's why we're in samsara. We're here. And it's one of the things that I like about dancing is that when you do share, you're not saying this is perfect. You're saying this is what I can do today. And tomorrow, maybe it would have been better. Maybe it will be better. I hope it'll be better, more skillful. But you do the best you can. And with that honesty, it'll be fine. As far as anyone who wants to make a career in dance, You have to think about how you're going to support yourself economically. Are your parents going to be your patrons forever? Um, um, I mean, it's, I mean, basically, you will not earn a living from dance in the sense that you will not earn a living from performance. The opportunities have changed. You know, in the earlier days in my career in India, from those days, we used to get performances for conventions. If there was a meeting of doctors, then in the evening they would have a cultural program. Today, none of them want to have a classical dance cultural program unless they have a foreign dignitary and they need to show off Indian culture. So that's dried up. It used to be that if we went to perform in one city, we could also schedule a Doordarshan program, and that would be supplemental. But now you can only be recorded by Doordarshan in the in your base city. Obviously, all over the world, dancers do not really earn a living just dancing. Even the professional dancers in New York City, you have to teach. Number one, you have to teach. And you have to have things, you have to find the way. You see, in life, you have to pay with something, with your time, or with your money, or with your values, which I hope you don't pay with. But you may, you can be a dancer who is top-notch and excellent and share your art, and also operate in another profession for earning a living. It's not easy because it takes away your focus. It, you know, that thing pulls you and pulls you and pulls you. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if you want to dance, you will dance. And you will dance the best that you can. But no one should expect that they're going to be earning a living. And I mean, I would say that when parents are having their children learning dance for years and they don't know better, and they think that they'll have an arangetram and that after that, then they launch on a career, it's like, as long as you want to keep paying for them to perform, they will be performing. It's a long road, and even if you have a child, whether it's dance or anything in the creative arts, I know that I had personally prepared myself that even if your child is really excellent and they go to university, it's going to take 15 years before they're going to have made enough of a mark that you aren't going to like have to half support them through their artistic career. So I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I wouldn't expect to go into dance thinking that it's a money making.
It is lucrative career. Yes, well said. Well said in present times, because
we used to
everybody wants.
Give up and open a pandukan, right? Give up your dance, open a pandukan and earn a living.
Everybody, they start with the first line that ours is a small organization. We cannot pay you. You know, you're large and we cannot pay you. This is the tagline that every corporate or college or university, wherever they are hiring dancers, would always say. So that's the punchline. We are small. We don't want to value your art, but this is the amount, and that amount is almost negligible. So anything would you like to say as a parting note to the viewers as well as me. Anything, please go on.
Well, I am very appreciative that you're taking this effort and inviting people and sharing for those that are interested in hearing. And it's an interesting thing, this community of artists, and I suspect that virtually everyone who is watching this is someone who has a passion and a love for the arts. And I think that all of us have been profoundly affected by performances that we have experienced, which is why we feel that by immersing ourselves and sharing it, that we can aim for that impact on others. And it's a very worthwhile thing to do. Nothing more wonderful. And the thing is that when you are involved in dance, you're involved in, what is the focus? Love, truth, and beauty. Not superficial, not saccharine, not sweetie, but really profound and metaphysical. Everyone doesn't necessarily go deeply into that. Just like when you do a ritual, you can do it empty, or it can be a gateway to something. Religion is a gateway to spirituality. It's not automatic. The love, truth, and beauty that you're focused on in the dance is an opportunity for you to be connected to wonderful things. That is what your life's work is about. And that means that along with your physical practice, your life growth is half your riyaz. And, and I think ultimately it can take you to a wonderful place. It should, if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So thank you so much for inviting me. And I hope I haven't been boring anyone with pontificating.
Thank you, ma'am. It was wonderful. Yes, it was really very, very deep. And of course, it was straight from the heart. I always cherish these wonderful conversations I have with the legends like you, because these are the talks and conversations. That is one thing that if there was no pandemic and that we were not bound by this thing, I don't think I would have conceived the thought that we should do something like this, because everybody is dancing. Somebody's dancing in the park, somebody's dancing in the bedroom, somebody's dancing in the drawing room and uploading it. And it's like, I'm best, I'm best, I'm best. This is happening everywhere. Everybody's in the rat race, whether pandemic or pre-pandemic. But I thought there should be somewhere where, I could have a conversation with celebrities like you, where it becomes a medium for younger dancers like us to follow and probably, take some things to incorporate in our lives rather than just mimic and gimmick or make buffoony acts, as you said. Like, you can do a ritual. That's the wonderful way of interpreting. You said, you can do a ritual with involvement, and you can still do the ritual without involvement. For the heck of ritualistic pleasure. So yes, that is one thing I would take it from you, and it was so wonderful. Your insight and your journey. You've been inspiring so many. I'm sure for many, many generations, they will look up to you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for consenting to be a part of Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana series. Thank you wholeheartedly from audiences as well as my side, and as well as this medium that is helping us to come closer and talk and exchange the thoughts. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being with you. Stay safe.
Thank you. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಹೊತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶಾರನ್ ಲೋವೆನ್ ಅವರಿದ್ರು. ಅವರ ಮನದಾಳದ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಇಷ್ಟು ಸುಂದರವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಮಾಲೆಯ ತರ ಪೋಣಿಸಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. This was so wonderful when she put it across so sweetly when she said you can do things with involvement, you can do things just for the act of probably a cluny or buffoony act, rather you just would portray it and do. So that is one thing. Whatever you do, put your heart and soul into it. This was again said by Shobhanaji also. So every day there is this wonderful celebrity coming over and sharing their thoughts and knowledge. I'm so grateful for each one of them who are coming on this medium and sharing their thoughts and ideas and their journey with all of us. This is Badari Divya Bhushan signing off today. Tomorrow, do come back, witness another celebrity coming and sharing their experience. I'll keep that as a surprise. Tomorrow at 6:30, Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana on the Facebook page, Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana. Till then, stay safe, stay indoors, fight Corona, keep looking at Vishwa Nruthya Bhushana. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ನಾಳೆ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ಬ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಅದ್ಭುತ ಕಲಾವಿದರಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಈ ಒಂದು ಮಾತಿನೊಂದಿಗೆ ಈ 45 ದಿನಗಳ ಸರಣಿ ನಾವು ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಒಂದು ಶುಭ ಹಾರೈಕೆ ಮತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲದರ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯೂವರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ನೋಡ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅರ್ಥವೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಯು ಬೀನ್ ವಂಡರ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಯು ಫಾಲೋಡ್ ಅವರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಫಾಲೋಡ್ ಈಚ್ ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರಿಟೀಸ್ ಟಾಕ್ ಓವರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಪೇಜ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಅ ಲಾಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ನಾಳೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಭೇಟಿ ಆಗ್ತೀನಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯವರೆಗೂ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇರಿ, ವಿಶ್ವ ನೃತ್ಯ ಭೂಷಣವನ್ನ ನೋಡಿ, ನೀವು ಬನ್ನಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮವರನ್ನು ಕರೆತನ್ನಿ. ಈ ತರಹದ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಮಾತುಗಳು ಅಥವಾ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಒಂದು ರಸದೌತಣ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಈ ದಿನದ ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮ್ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.